So again, my name's Rodney Smith Merkley, and I want to thank you all for joining us tonight, especially the All Our Relations Land Trust, Maureen Buchanan, Caitlin Patterson, and Pat Roebuck, and we're hoping Peter Hodgson is going to be joining in a little bit. We also have church partners from Toronto United Church Council, and they're a team that's holding the parcel of land that Faith United Church is about to transfer to, my understanding, the All Our Relations Land Trust on December the 17th. So some of you have been a part of this from the beginning, and some have just been aware of this story very recently, but it's a joy to be on the land, and I was remembering a day last fall to be on the land. So over the course of this evening, we hope to learn a little bit about what's been happening. We're going to start with a welcome from Caitlin Ostrander, who's the chair of our Indigenous Justice and Respectful Relations Forum, and she's going to offer an opening, and then Maureen Buchanan will continue that in a good way. And then I think Pat Roebuck has a PowerPoint. Maureen has a PowerPoint. We'll have opportunity to ask some questions, or maybe they want you to ask questions sooner than that, but I'm hoping we can keep this to about an hour and a half tonight. So thank you again for joining, and welcome. Caitlin.
Thank you, Rodney. So as Rodney said, my name is Caitlin Ostrander. I am the chair of the Indigenous Justice and Respectful Relations Forum for East Central Ontario Regional Council. I'm also the minister with Pickering Village United Church. And I do just want to highlight right off the back that we do have an equity monitor with us tonight. Her name is Nancy Clark. She will have equity in front of her name. She's waving there for everyone to see. So Nancy Clark is on the Equity Forum, and if there are any issues equity-wise, please don't hesitate to be in touch with her. If you are having any technical issues, Sharon Hall will be a good person to be in touch with for that. And then we will have a quick equity report at the end of our meeting, just to see how we came together in a good way. So friends, as we gather in this Zoom space in many different places, I'm going to invite you to center yourself in this time, in this place, and that is done in so many different ways as we are different humans with different bodies, but I will invite, maybe it is planting your feet on the ground, relaxing your shoulders. I'll invite everyone to take a deep breath in as we prepare to gather together, acknowledge the land, read some scripture, and pray. So I want to acknowledge our identity as an affirming ministry, and I also want to invite you to acknowledge your relationship with the land that you are joining us from, and the history of that land, its waters, and its people. Long before my people journeyed to this land, Indigenous people were here. And they receive from their elders an understanding of creation and of the mystery that surrounds us all, that was deep, rich, and to be treasured. When they shared their vision, my people did not hear. My people tried to force Indigenous peoples to be like us, and in doing so, we helped to destroy the vision that made them what they were. We are in the midst of a long and painful journey as we reflect on the cries that our church did not or would not hear, and how we have behaved as a church. As we travel this difficult road of repentance, reconciliation, and healing, we commit ourselves to working towards ensuring that we will never again use our power as a church to hurt others with attitudes of racial and spiritual superiority. We pray that all Indigenous people will hear the sincerity of our words today, and that they will witness the living out of our apology in our actions in the future. And I thought I would read scripture from Psalm 24, verses 1 to 2. The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. For he founded it on the seas and established it on the waters. Let us pray. As we have been called to this place to support the work of Indigenous justice, respectful relations, and its ministry in all its many forms, help us, O God. As we listen, learn, grow, and build together, guide us, O God. When we fall, make mistakes, and look for help, support us, O God. We come now immersed in the Word of God and covered in the love of God. Amen. And I would like to invite Maureen now to share with us some teachings.
Ani bojo nila sinek brain to go, megazay and dotem, shouting and don't spat in brain da. So Shnobby Moon, I'm speaking. Bojo Nindinaway Morgan a Duke. That means you're like, hey, y'all must be my relations. Ani. Gonna show you this is a quill box. In the quill box, there's you can see there's a medicine wheel, you can see there's an eagle there, Megazay. That's my clan. And in that box, Megazay sits in the east, along with that yellow color there. And in that direction is Sema. And in the Ojibwe world, there's a phrase called Akwaya Sema. I mean, Sema always comes first, always goes first. And so I'm going to do an opening with Sema. Sema is a medicine. It's a sacred medicine. It's one of the 4 sacred medicines. It's grown in various places. It also grows on the land. I'm going to use Anishinaabe Moan, and I'll translate as I go. I feel it's very important to use the language. And even like I was very struck and grateful, Caitlin, for your words. It's very powerful to take all of that in. So, Miigwech Kajem Nado. So I'm grateful. I'm showing my heartfelt thanks, gratitude to the kind spirit. King Kinige Go Gajatoyan, you have made everything. Miigwech Nokamistibik Jesus, Kibiwasiajian Nidibikuk. So, Grandmother Moon, thank you. She shines every night. She does all of that work, all of the work of so many levels of what she does. Miigwech Mishomis Jesus, Kibiwasiajian, and Sagishka. Miigwech, the sun, grandfather's son, who shines every day. And again, you can imagine and understand how that just holds all of this web of life that we are in. Miigwech Shkakamekwe. Now this is the one that makes me always want to tear up. Shkakamekwe is Mother Earth. Miigwech Shkakamekwe. Gimi Jung Damatsuans. You've given us good life. Gimi Jung Amijan. Food. Nasewin, you've given us. Miigwech Gimi Jung Wesiok, animals, Mituguk, trees, Mishkons, grasses. Gimi Jung Kinagego, everything. Kinawia, everyone. Miigwech Shkakamekwe. Now I have this Sema here in my hand. Sema Bagadana. Now Sema is alive. We think it as a spiritually alive. And when I'm offering it, now I'm going to offer on behalf of us. So Sema and Bagadana, I'm offering this living spirit here. I'm going to offer to Wabanong, the east, Jaonong, the south, Gishmak, the west, Giwegnong, the north, Daga, not emotional, help us. Daga, not emotional. Jimshko Gaboyan, to stand strong. Jizong De Aeon, to have a strong heart. Jitchit and Nokian, so that we can do this great work. And I say it as a we, that we can do this great work. Mamawe together. Miigwech Kajem Nado. how this is, I put all that into the SEMA, and the SEMA is thought to like really carry this into the, we talk about like this World Wide Web. Well, there's like Worldwide Spirit. So this is going to carry it right there and help to activate this intention. And I'm going to put it into my little smudge shell here, which is just sort of going away. Miigwech, Bisindawyak, thank you for listening to me, all of you.
My name is Pat Roebuck, and I belong to Faith United Church, and I have been on the Walking the Path of Peace Together Land Council in a couple of different roles, and I am now a volunteer with the All Our Relations Land Trust. And so I'm just going to share my screen here. All right. So we are, it's a really great story. It's wound its way like a river. This whole evening is telling about leading up to the transfer of United Church land to the All Our Relations Land Trust. And so it all started with the land. In the early 90s, the east end of Kingston started growing up, and they were planning lots of subdivisions. And so they started Faith United Church over at that end. And at that time, the United Church of Canada purchased a piece of land, 2.86 acres, for Faith to build a church. And Faith decided very early on, I was not part of the congregation then, that rather than put their money and time into a structure, that they would put those efforts into building community instead. And so the land stood vacant, well, not vacant, the farmer used it as a hayfield. And so in this picture, you see Nan Hudson, who at the beginning of this journey with Walking the Path of Peace Together, she was our minister at Faith at the time. And for like 30 some years, there was a sign in front of the land saying future home of Faith United Church. And even though we don't have a church, we do worship regularly. We've rented space for all those years. And we're still at present time and have for very many years been meeting at the LaSalle Secondary School on Highway 15. So when you look behind Nan here, you can see that it's hayfield. That land isn't part of our section. Behind the sign, there's 2.68 acres of the land that we're talking about. And so when you see future pictures, just remember that it was all part of this field here. And so Faith over the decades has talked about different things with the land. But about the time that the Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action came out, the United Church of Canada contacted Faith and said, do you have any plans for that land? So we started looking a little more, with greater purpose at that question. And just a second, for some reason, it's not moving. There we are. So is there a higher purpose to this land? And brainstorming, prayer, and then we all seem to focus on, we were inspired with the idea of a garden of reconciliation. And so once we sort of set our intention for that, we started working on three things: acknowledgement of the injustices, self-education, and reaching out to make connections. And those things all happened about the same time. So with the acknowledgement and education, we, Nan and some other members of Faith United went to see Murray Sinclair talk at Queen's. We did book studies. We did these two pamphlets were written by a church member of ours, and we had study of them together after church, and we joined with other groups for some of the book studies. And we went to see I think it's Ken Monkman's art exhibit on colonialism, how the Indigenous folks would look at colonialism. So the whole thing was set up so that you would see it through an Indigenous person's eyes. So we needed to reach out, and we knew we were not going to create a garden and then invite Indigenous people to come and join us. And so one of the people who Nan and the other folks connected with was Peter Hodgson, and he's an Indigenous man whose business, Three Things Consulting, works with young people, and he does a lot of really interesting work all around. He's very well known far beyond Kingston as well. And he went and did a survey at one of the grandmothers' potluck feasts, and he surveyed quite a few people, and from that he created the document Walking the Path of Peace Together, and from that came the Land Council, and the people that were surveyed, they wanted a place to work, a place to have ceremony, to have their own garden, grow their own food, bring their children, learn language, to connect to each other and their cultures, and a welcoming place for everything. And they really wanted the land as well. And in this process, for the Indigenous folks, as well as for us, Indigenous leadership is key. And so in order to gift the land, we needed a legal entity to be able to legally gift it. And so Maureen Buchanan and Caitlin and some other folks got together and created the All Our Relations Land Trust. And I think it's a really great fit, and you'll see that as we go through. Here's one of our first meetings on the land, and at that point it was still a hayfield, and we met there on the land to commit together to walk together into the future in a good way. And we have been meeting that date every year to recommit to that promise. So there's so much to show you about the actual work on the land. I could go on forever, so I've tried to put it in a few little points. At this top left picture, it gives you an aerial view, and oh my goodness, the name escapes me. But one of our friends that I'll pop the information in later has done those drone shots for us. And so you see that from a cornfield that we have a garden here, we've got solar panels, we have water collection, we have climbers for the kids, we've got picnic tables, so the solar panels allowed us to get off gas generated energy for pumping our water from the well. But because we've now got this really great drip system, we rarely have to use the well at all. And then for growing things on the land, this picture in the bottom right-hand corner is that one of the little forests we planted, I don't know, 1,500 trees maybe over the last few years. but we have a medicine garden, Three Sisters bed, nut grove, hedgerows, lots of the fruit guild, a lot of things that you can eat. You can walk down the hedgerow and pop some berries in your mouth. And here's another shot of sort of our working corner of the land. And the main reason I'm showing this is so that you can see the difference between the land here. I'm not sure whether you can see my pointer, but the land around us is the farmer's field, and this year he put in a soybean crop, and you can see that there's not a lot of diversity there, and but when you look at all the growth at the Indigenous Food Sovereignty Garden, it's really obvious the work that's happening. So we connected to each other, but also the whole community comes to the land and come for ceremony, for work bees, family cultural gatherings, meetings, or just for a walk. The gate's open, and all are welcome. And I just wanted to mention here that with every gathering, every time we work on the land, there is ceremony, and ceremony is always offered, whether the laying of the sema or smudging, and it really helps to center and set our intentions. And it's just a great thing that happens all the time. And here's more pictures of folks working on the land, playing, and you get an idea of the number of people who come. And here are some of our little friends that have moved in or stopped by for a visit. And looking at the picture of the bee on the sunflower, one of our friends was over at the land, and he was looking in the pollinator garden bed, and he just stood there for a few minutes, and he said, "Pat, I've just seen 6 different species of bees here in this one little section." So it's just remarkable. And so I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking to you about my own journey of reconciliation. When I started this project, and then in 2021, Maureen and I started working a lot together. And so in my own journey, I've really learned to just stop and listen. And as I did that, it took a while, but because I'm in the dominant culture, and I'm exposed to my culture all the time, so I don't really, one of my friends has said, it's the water we swim in. So it's hard to see somebody else's worldview. And so that was a real opening to me. For example, biodiversity. When you look at biodiversity and then think of all my relations, it's more from your heart. There's more of a connection, and so we're good friends with each other. Some of my best friends I've got to know through this project, but also when you hold the asema in your hand next to your heart, and then you thoughtfully, with intention, lay it on the ground, you're really making a commitment. So you don't just kind of walk in and grab your shovel and go. And just quickly, we've been doing some work with scientists with the two-eyed seeing, and the last time we were on there, we were examining soil, and my group went to the vegetable garden, which granted is going to have beautiful soil. And so we started looking. We didn't think we'd see that much because it was a couple of weeks ago, it's November. And we started looking in our section, and it's like, oh, there's a couple of bugs. Then we kept looking deeper and more deeply, and we kept seeing bugs and worms and organic matter, and we were feeling the texture, the moist, crumbly texture of it. And then we went to the farmer's field, and we dug in that, and we kept looking. We found 2 sad-looking bugs, and the soil, there was no organic matter other than what was left from the crop at the top. And when you held the soil in your hand, it was clumpy, hard, cheapers, clay. It was hard clay that you would have problems breaking apart. And I thought, wow, in 2019, that would have been the soil that we have on the land. And it was such a great feeling that such work had been done in such little time. And one thing that I meant to say as well earlier on, when people come to the land, even like for the first time, they're really struck by the feeling of caring there. Like we work together, we know each other. There's such a feeling of caring and love between all the people and the work on the land. It's a wonderful place to visit. So if you haven't been, please come. And that's the end of my section of the story. That kind of takes us from the very seed to where we are now. So I'll just stop sharing and pass it over to Maureen.
Oh, so I'm gonna focus on where we're at now, kind of moving into the future a little bit. So the focus here that you can see here is All Our Relations Land Trust logo. This was created by a community member, Jaylene Cardinal, who was actually part of the original Walking the Path of Peace group. And she does a lot of beautiful work and painted a beautiful symbol on the shed door. And this is what inspired this logo that we are using for the Land Trust. And she gifted that to the Land Trust. And here you can see one of the people who comes to the land and does work. There's a lot of love and care of the land. She's holding a great big sweet potato that we grew this past summer. And we're all struck by the size of these sweet potatoes. They have names. Arnold is one of the names. And then you can see just on the other side, just another picture of the garden. You can see the solar panels and that sort of thing. And it's kind of situating where we're at now. So I want to talk a bit about land stewardship, like a community-based land stewardship. So from a land trust perspective, we're envisioning a relationship with the land that centers Indigenous ways of knowing, centers ceremony, community action, and these things in combination, I think, underlie healing and decolonizing. So just, at the beginning, as Pat pointed out, and the garden became Indigenous-led, I suppose you could say, in 2021. So these are just images, sort of that over the last few years, and Pat has touched on those things, talking about the accomplishments. So we planted forests, we planted gardens, we expanded gardens, we made a walnut grove. There was lots of kids who came to the garden. Here you can see there's actually the library is here, and families signed out library cards and picked up, took out books related to legends and I think seasonal teachings. Those sorts of activities have happened. There's been lots of exploring, lots of playing. You can see that we also built some things, and so the rain collection structure, it was like a shade structure because it's very, very hot in the summer times, and so we really do need that shade, but it also doubles as a rain collection structure. And the rain collection really irrigates the garden and other parts of the orchard, etc. And there's you can see that there's a although we do most of our work in the, spring, summer, fall, the winter does, continues to feed all of our relations. We leave sunflowers standing, etc., and that's all provides food. And there's all this life happening when we're not there, of course, because it's an ecosystem. And finally, you can see there's Peter there at the, he was pretending to help to build. I'm teasing Peter because Peter will proclaim his laziness, which is so not true. And here's a picture of the shade structure that was built in that first year, or not shade structure, sorry, play structure. Yeah, and so you can see that there's a lot that happens, a lot that's happened on the land. So out of all this beautiful, complex, and challenging work has emerged a model of, I believe, of Indigenous community-based land stewardship. And this approach to land stewardship involves individuals of all ages and stages caring for the land, grounded in the principle of reciprocity and relationship. People, parents, children, families, aunties, uncles, etc., they gift their time to the stewardship of the land. And in caring for the land, we begin to see both ourselves and the land with new eyes. We recognize that the human community is not separate from the ecosystem. We are part of it. And by working with the intelligence of the ecosystem, we contribute to the continuation of life. A child learns about their connection to the land through play. When we gather and we smudge and offer sema to express gratitude to Mama Aki, Mother Earth, or Shkakamukwe, we seek permission from and thanks from the plants that we harvest. And in their play, the children plant, water, observe all sorts of living beings, harvest and eat food. They see birds feeding from sunflowers on sunflowers, they're picking those seeds, and they watch the forest grow from year to year. And they might hear Anishinaabe Moan or Ganyageha, indigenous languages, in songs, and learn the names of things in the languages of the land. Their caregivers and the community watch over them as they play tag and run around joyfully, sometimes angrily. And this experience allows children to understand that they are part of an ecosystem, that the community is part of an ecosystem, that they're surrounded by all of our relations, our relatives, our ecological kin. There are many ways in climate crisis and biodiversity crisis. Community-based land stewardship needs a good roadmap. The lands around the garden are slated for development and could fragment the landscape, create heat islands, and increase the risk of flooding. So I just wanted to show you this now. This little green diamond is actually the little land, the hectare of land. And all around it is an agricultural fields and pasture. And the very back, there's Butternut Creek. I believe it's like a park or conservation area. There's a bit of a water course that comes down, and some of it kind of pops up in the seasonal flow just down this property line here. You can see here all of this housing development. And you can see that there's a these are fields. You can see that there's trees. There's a bit of a hedgerow. And you can see in the housing development, it's very low canopy. There's lots of hardscaping. It creates a heat island. Same thing here. These are business parks. They're hardscaped, parking lots, flat roofs, not much in the way of canopy or really green. The design of a business park has not typically included ecological considerations. And they're very concerned about, the human roadway. So this is what development looks like in the East End. And you can imagine all of this that I'm now pulling my cursor over. You can see all of this will be slated for development. Just across the road, not too far away, is the Great Cataraqui River, a protected wetland. Water tends to flow to this across the landscape in such a way where it all flows to this yellow line and then crosses the highway and then will flow across the property and over the escarpment. So this is a very important time to be thinking about what land stewardship looks like. Here's a closer look of the same property. Now this is now years ago. This is like this was like a Google Earth, right? So this is not current. Otherwise, you'd see a very different picture on the hectare of land, because it'd be much more like this as opposed to this field that you're seeing. But this is part of that hectare right here. You see Highway 15 courses up and across. And there's now a bridge that's been built to cross over the Cataraqui River just a little bit further down 15. All of this is slated for development. So in order to address this complexity, we need to work to preserve and strengthen an interconnected landscape of ecological corridors, green corridors that connect green spaces and biodiverse patches. And what does that mean? It means the pictures that Pat showed you, some of the ones that you've seen, that shows biodiversity. This hectare, that is the land that is being gifted, is an extremely biodiverse patch, and part of our goals of land stewardship, of course, is to create more habitat to support more biodiversity. And we've been planting and restoring many native species to the land as well. So this biodiverse patch will do much better 10 years from now if it's connected to other biodiverse patches. So this forest back here, this waterland, it'd be very, very helpful if there was a connection from this patch to this patch. And it'd be very, very helpful if these patches are connected to the very rural edge of Kingston, because that's where most of the canopy of Kingston is. So there's more life there. So the goal is, and it's a really important goal, to try to maintain a connectivity across the landscape in the situation of development. This is for biodiversity, but it's also, humans are part of the ecosystem. This kind of landscape of connectivity, it actually cools neighborhoods. It absorbs rainwater into the water table, replenishes the water table. It helps trees be resilient to high winds and creates space, of course, for our kin to shelter, to eat, reproduce, and sustain genetic diversity. So there's good reasons for trying to maintain this landscape interconnectivity. In 2025, I'm just going to go back a bit. In 2025, we're going to map ecological corridors and biodiverse patches in the lands all around us. It looks like it's all agricultural as it stands right now, but this is going to be developed. So we're going to do this mapping, and we're going to have a second layer that will show the planned development, and then we can identify where there are currently biodiverse patches and ecological corridors. And then our goal is to use this as a way to advocate with the municipality and developers and neighborhoods and neighbors a way forward with development, so that we are protecting and preserving these corridors that exist and these patches that exist, because it has such a benefit for biodiversity and also has a benefit for climate resilience. We can design climate resilient neighborhoods. And this is key, because if we think we can air condition ourselves out of the climate crisis, we can't. So we need to be really thinking very differently about how we do design and how we do development and how nature exists and must coexist. We live in an ecosystem. So while mapping is the first step, we'll continue to advocate, and we have tools such as conservation easements. As a land trust, we have tools such as conservation easements, stewardship agreements, and land acquisition that might be helpful in helping to protect the landscape. But this would not be for the sake of just acquiring land for the sake of acquiring land. It would be to help support a community in adopting a new way forward. We also need to be thinking about how we're doing land stewardship. So it's a time of crisis and change. But this year, in 2025, we'll be initiating a weekly circle. So currently we do 2 days in the garden every week. So we'll add a third day. And in this third day, we'll use it as a space to create the possibility of being reflexive, help us discern patterns of climate resilience and vulnerability, and help us to decolonize our minds, because it's our minds that are getting in the way of being able to observe and be with nature to learn from the land directly. And when I say our minds are getting in the way, it's like these colonial artifacts in our minds that say, okay, we need to be thinking only about the land in terms of the property line. That doesn't make sense. The land exists in an ecosystem. It's part of a watershed. The water table actually goes beyond the property boundaries. The property boundary is an artifact. We need to be thinking ecosystem. So in order for us to do this, to do this kind of consciousness raising, we need to create a space for that. So we're going to do this one day a week at the garden. We need to be really practical about this because this is volunteer led. So it has to be practical, simple. So during this time, we'll prioritize Indigenous ways of knowing, and we'll use ceremony, carry out observations using all of our senses, and using arts-based practices to both render and conjure insights about our ecological kin. We will collect information using biomonitoring equipment such as trail cams, a weather station, audio recorders, and lab tests. In the first half of this weekly circle will be devoted to this deep observational practice of the land and compilation of biomonitoring information. The second half of this third day of this circle will be a sharing circle in which we articulate our experiences, we ask questions, we share insights, and we deepen our relationship with the land and one another through a sharing circle process. And this is, of course, all anchored and rooted in the ceremony as we come to the land. We will take notes from which we will create a phenology calendar or a calendar that marks the natural happenings according to the seasonal changes. And this phenology calendar can be used to track year-to-year change from a climate and biodiversity perspective. It can also help us recalibrate our land stewardship activities related to seasonal changes or particular locations on the land, and all based upon how we see our relatives doing. And when I say our relatives, I mean pollinators, I mean the various animals, birds, etc., that live on the land and that or pass through the land as part of their life course. These circles will focus on domains that are these conversations, these activities that we'll be planning on this third day of the garden will be grouped in such a way to reflect really key Indigenous concepts. Ake is sacred. Land, the earth is sacred. Nebe is sacred. Water is sacred. It is the foundation of life. And that we are all ecologically networked together for survival, for the continuation of life. Here is an example of a draft plan of what this actually looks like of this third day to evolve our land stewardship practice. It's a draft plan. And you can see that the activities are formed under these principles of soil is sacred, Nebe is sacred, and then the activities that flow out of this according to where we are in the seasonal cycle. So in March, for example, we'll have a garden opening ceremony. This is how we come to, say to the garden, say to the land, we're here, we want to do this work, and to put down our best intentions for the continuing survival of all of our relations. So we'll do this ceremony. That's part of the opening. That's part of the land stewardship. There's an opportunity to use Indigenous languages for the expression of gratitude and the expression of asking permission from the land. These are really important concepts for cultural revitalization, for centering Indigenous perspectives, and to help us decolonize our minds. Because in the languages, things are different. They are different from English. We'll do observational practices in March. We'll be looking at the soil. We'll be listening and watching for what birds and insects are currently present. We'll be looking to see who's blooming. We know that, for example, I think as a grass, sweetgrass is one of the first grasses that bloom. We should be looking and marking that. Where is that happening in the season? And how will this shift over time? Where is it wet on the land? This tells us a little bit about where the water table is and how full the water table is. And we can use a microscope to explore soil, and we can collect water for a water test. This is what some of the things that we can do. I just also want to come down to this concept of arts-based practice. So here, under the principle of Akhe, or the earth is sacred, we could do a clay workshop. So one of the persons who's been very fundamental, very or important to the establishment of the land trust is a man named Sheldon. And Sheldon harvests clay, natural clay, and uses a natural fire to create pottery, and has been doing a study to revitalize the practices that of his people. So Sheldon has harvested clay from the land and has created vessels in a natural fire from the land that is being gifted. This is such a fundamental and important practice to understand the ways in which soil is used, clay is used. There are many creation stories that involve clay. And there's a way of thinking about reciprocity. When we harvest clay, we return soil by way of compost back to the land. So this arts-based practice has many teachings, like a nesting doll embedded in it. That makes a difference. It makes a difference to how we think about the soil, how we think about our own, stories, cultural stories. It makes a difference about understanding what does it mean to be in a reciprocal relation with the land. So those are the kinds of practices that are emerging that I believe are going to help us form Indigenous community-based land stewardship that is decolonizing, that is really centers Indigenous ways of knowing, and that will help us be able to learn directly from the land about decisions that we need to make to continue the purpose, which is the continuation of life, to make space for all of our relations to thrive. So I'm going to close with this image. It's a sculptural depiction of the seven generations teaching. Each human form represents a generation, and the sculpture as a whole depicts the intergenerational connections between us in the constant and continuous field of the ecosystem. We are not separate from the ecosystem. This way of doing land stewardship that's emerging out of this project, I hope, will exemplify this understanding so that our grandchildren's grandchildren will be able to continue the work. Me-you, that's what I got. Miigwech.
Oh, miigwech, Maureen and Pat, for your inspiring presentations. Amazing. So good to learn about the higher purpose for that land that took 7 years, is what I counted when you made that first commitment. And what a good story to think about on Canada Day. What a hopeful story. That higher purpose of Indigenous community-based land stewardship, about reciprocity and relationship, two-eyed seeing, climate resilient neighborhoods and ecosystems. And what a beautiful logo for all our relations land trusts. So Chi-miigwech, thank you so much to both of you.